Hello. I hope everybody's having a wonderful start to their week. It's a beautiful Tuesday. It's not raining for a change, and I'm going to do some work on my rental property. I'm getting that place sold. A tip of advice, anybody, if you ever have a place to come up and you're thinking about renting it, don't do it. It's not worth it. Just sell that property and move on. It takes a lot of money to upkeep them, but that's another topic for another day. I'm going to talk about a real serious topic today, and a topic that personally affects me. I'm going to give some of my personal testimony, and that's I want to talk to you about CTE. I can't pronounce the word. It's I cannot even try to pronounce it. Look it up on Google. You'll see the big scientific name. They abbreviated CTE. It's so hard to say, but what CTE is when the brain has many traumas to it and many impacts. It causes, pretty much, for lack of a better way of explaining it, is permanent brain damage. It's unrepairable brain tissue that actually kind of withers. If you see the brain of a person who has CTE, when they do an autopsy, their brain almost looks like a prune. It kind of shrinks and shrivels up, looks like it almost dries out, and that's just from that unhealthy tissue not being able to function properly. I don't know if it's a matter of blood flow. I don't know all the ins and outs of science. I just know that damage is not repairable, and it steadily goes worse, almost like Alzheimer's or something like that. It's a slow deterioration. Talk to you about CTE because I'm a retired soldier. I did quite a few years. I did almost 20. I got a medical discharge. I got hurt in service, and I spent my last 9 months in a hospital, and then I was having surgeries to help me walk again over the next 3 years. I had to learn how to walk twice, and one of the main things that I had too is I had a brain trauma. I had a class 2 TBI. Happened during a training event, and my head got crushed in an industrial door, and I had multiple impacts, not just one, but I had 3 or 4 impacts on it after the first impact. How to describe that experience? It was a haze. When it happened, I didn't fully lose consciousness. I kind of blacked out, flashed out for a minute, and everything went white. And I felt like I was okay. I was like, I'm good. And I finished that day of training. And as soon as training got done, like, I got so dizzy and everything was twisted, I couldn't even walk correctly. I felt like the ground was coming from above me instead of below me. And I got taken to a hospital or whatever, and they diagnosed me with a class 2 TBI. And pretty much when you have that serious of a brain trauma, they put you in bed. I think it was 14 days that I had to spend on bed rest. Pretty much at that point, your brain is very fragile. If it gets hit by another impact during that period of time where you've just had that large impact and you're waiting to heal from it, and you get another impact, it's almost certainly, you're a permanent vegetable. You pretty much lose all brain cognition and function. And so anyway, I spent that time in bed, and it was a very strange time. I can even tell you during this period that my mind was doing weird things. Now, I will say this wasn't my first brain trauma. I got hurt in this major brain trauma in the Army, but before that I'd had 20 major minor concussions between participating in combat sports such as wrestling and all sorts of different sports. And I played football and had some concussions there. I was in several car accidents. My head hit a windshield and a dashboard. I used to get in a lot of fights as a kid, and I've lost consciousness from getting in many fights as a kid. I kind of grew up very rough, and that's a topic for another day as well. But I flipped a motorcycle and hit myself on the head. There was a bunch of things I did, and I had lots of brain trauma. And this big brain trauma that I had, I think it was in 2011. It just kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, when I was in that bed, like I said, weird stuff was already happening. I could tell that something wasn't right with my brain. I'm a very alpha type male. I enjoy sports, hunting, fishing, if I'm watching TV shows, I like stuff about cops and, or the West. And, I'm a very kind of manly man. And I remember when I was laid up in bed, all I could do was watch TV. And I was flipping through Netflix and binge watching. And I came across a show called Glee. Now, I'm not down in Glee. I'm not down in the show. I don't really know much about it, but that season that I watched there. But I will say this, never in a million years would I choose to watch that show, but for some reason, my brain in the state it was in I chose to watch this show. And I became like deeply entangled in it. Like I was watching it and like the songs they would sing, I would cry and I would get hyper emotional and like sobbing and just weird reactions to it. I would get angry at it and just an overwhelming response to this, this show that, now I can't watch it for 5 minutes. It's kind of awful to me. But I mean, if people are fans of it, enjoy it. It's not my cup of tea. But during that time, my brain was definitely not right. And it took a while to get my mind right again. As years have gone by, at first, I thought I didn't really realize the extent of the damage. When I came out of the hospital, I came off active duty, I tried to go back to school, to college. And to give you a little bit on my background, I have a bachelor's in theology with a lot of emphasis on philosophy as well. And then I have a master's degree in theology with a bunch of emphasis on anthropology. And my undergrad, I scored a 3.89, I believe. In my graduate school, I had a 4.0. Well, I went back to get a second master's and used my GI Bill portion that I gotten from what's called post 9/11 GI Bill from serving. I served like another 4 or 5 years after I'd used it, but about post 9/11. And we got another chunk of change to go back to school. And I went to school for special education for teaching. And I did only a semester. And school was always something I did very, very well. I only took 3 classes, a minimum of 9 hours. They were intro level classes and I couldn't keep up. You're talking someone that would read 400 or 500 pages a night. You have to skim through that much material. I've written in seminary, I've written as much as like 267 page papers, and I couldn't keep up in a basic education, an introduction to special education class. I was getting B's and C's and everything, and I've never been, the last B I made was as a freshman in college. I worked really hard to get past that. It wasn't my work ethic, it wasn't anything. I just couldn't keep up. I couldn't read the pages. 10 pages at night, 11 pages would be extremely a lot for me to do. I, in fact, didn't even finish that quarter of school, and I'd had some problems. They had not diagnosed some problems I had rightly with my hips got destroyed and my back, and they thought it was just SI joint. I had like 18 injections that got me feeling pretty good for a period of about 4 months to get me off active duty, and then I got to the point I couldn't walk at all, and I was laid up for about 3 years waiting for surgeries through the VA. Then I had 3 major hip surgeries, and I also had a nerve surgery on the left foot where I lost all the nerves and feeling in that foot as well. And during this time, I noticed I got tested and went through my disability exams, and they did some cognitive tests on me, and I realized that my cognitive functioning wasn't that good. There's some simplistic things I couldn't do with recall and memory anymore. And I have a very high IQ. I think my IQ is somewhere like 132, something like that. Might be 127, 132, somewhere in that range. And I couldn't do very basic things for my IQ level and for my area of education, my extent of education. After this injury, as years have gone by, I started displaying more and more signs of like mental illness. I never had issues of mental illness before that TBI I had. I went through a rough period of when my wife and I got divorced, and I drank a lot. I'm not going to lie about that. I was drinking a lot of alcohol, and I was probably depressed, but I think many people out there have turned to alcohol in a time of sorrow, maybe for a short period of time, and realized it wasn't the answer. So what it was here, I got over that, got back to life. But these are deep symptoms that came up, and had showed in my life at any other time, and now they're manifesting severe manias, psychosis. I would lose track of time and days, constant confusion. I would do things that were erratic and out of character. I would do things and say things and not remember or have any remembrance or recall of doing those actions. I would get dementia at night and get confused. I would think people were other people. I would get people mixed up. I would forget people. I'd forget about them, forgot how I knew them, or I would just like look at them and couldn't remember them. I just like lost those people in my memory. I lost a bunch of people, like a gaps of years where I just couldn't remember them. They thought that I forgot about them, but I just like didn't care. But I just literally didn't have cognitive function of them. It was a really strange event. But as it's gone on, I was for a long period. I was by myself, living by myself. I was living under all these surgeries and recouping from surgery after surgery after surgery. By myself, went through a really difficult time, and like things got bad that my dementia got really, really bad. It got to the point that I thought there were aliens that were living in my attic, and I was leaving food up there for them. Like I was convinced, and like I was like looking into my security cameras all the time, and I thought there were ghosts in my security camera, and just strange things. My mind had pretty much made a break with reality. At that time, I got so depressed and so despondent. I went through I only had 2 cousins, and my first cousin just had issues with drugs and alcohol, and he was in and out in prison, and I loved the guy to death. He was the sweetest guy, but he had problems with substance abuse and came to a long end of his struggle. He took his life. He shot himself in the head, and soon after that, my uncle died, and that was pretty much the last of my family. All my grandparents died in 2008, 2009, and my dad, he's a Vietnam vet. He lives quite a ways away from me. He wrestles with diabetes, and he had a mild heart attack, so he has a lot of problems of his own. He's just nursing his own health, so I'm pretty much all on my own, and I have a daughter who has special needs that I have to be there for too. And at this time, I just wasn't able to pay bills. I wasn't able to leave the house. I just got this PTSD and this anxiety and this just dread. I couldn't leave the house. I guess they call it like an agoraphobia or agoraphobia, and it got to the point that I kept trying to check myself into a hospital because I kept having episodes of psychosis, just crazy delusions and things I knew weren't right. I knew that my mind wasn't right, so I keep checking myself in the hospital, and there's very little they could do for me. They keep me for observation, give me a sedative, and send me home. And that didn't do anything for it, because the problem is I have multiple brain traumas, and there's not a lot you can do for it. But my sister was coming and staying with me a lot at the hospital, waiting hours and hours at the hospital for me. And after a while, I got involved with a girl who I should have never been involved with. If I had probably had my mind in the right state, I never would have. But I was making choices and decisions I usually wouldn't. And she asked me to come and move in with her and her husband for a period of time. And I did. And it's been a little over a year now. You know, during that time, I went back to the psychiatrist and the psychologist and spent a lot of times tweaking my medications. It took me a long time to get on a cocktail of medications that keep me okay. I'm on a really strong dose of anti-mania and anti-psychosis things, along with I also have seizures, anti-seizure medication, and I have no ability to concentrate, so I have to be on medication for that too. But I have a cocktail of meds, but without them, I don't function. If I take them every day like I'm supposed to, I function pretty well. I have to do that plus 2 other things. I have to eat, which is something when I live by my own, I would go for days without eating. I just want to eat. I'm kind of anorexic. I have a not severe case anorexia, but a mild case. And I don't like to eat sometimes, and I would go days without eating. And I would also go days without sleeping. I would get sleeplessness where I would be up 3-4 days. People would think I was on drugs, but I wasn't on drugs. I just couldn't sleep. But when you can't sleep for that long of a period of time, it's about as bad as being on some kind of drug, because your mind you start having hallucinations, and you see shadows and hear noises. And I wasn't well, and I was by myself. So moving in with my sister and my brother, they're good Christian people. It gave me a good support system, helped me go to my doctor's appointment, have people around there for when I was having episodes, and they were there for me night and day for a long time until I got a routine down. And that was a big part of dealing with my CTE. I'm much more functional here a year and something later, live a pretty normal life. I'm not as active as I would like. I'm still in a lot of pain. I have to have a bunch of injections in my back come up this week, but I'm doing better. And one big part of it is one, I eat every day, I take my meds every day, and I sleep every day. In fact, I go to bed early usually go to bed by like 9 or 10 o'clock max. It's one thing with the CTE that I have is called sundowning. As I get dementia, and as the sun goes down, the later it gets, I tend to have breaks from reality. I lose track of myself, and I start doing things that I don't remember. I one night got on Facebook and started blurring out a bunch of gangster ass stuff on there about bleepity bleep that and bleepity bleep this, and I never do that on my Facebook. Never ever will I cuss and say mean or crazy things on Facebook. I usually post like prayer requests or pictures of me and my daughter, but I was just like, it was a cuss out to everybody in the world, and it was like, had the word niggas in it, and it was like, whoa. And people was like, whoa. People commented like, whoa, on my comment. And the thing was, I had no recollection whatsoever of making those comments. Same thing happened to me on Twitter. I got booted off of Twitter. Something on Twitter, I was up like 2 or 3 in the morning. I wasn't sleeping like I should have been. I stayed up too late. I had some anxiety, and something triggered me. And next thing I know, I'm threatening people, like threatening to hurt them and kill them and stuff. Like, I have a really bad temper. And the thing is, I'm a trained killer. I got trained in the United States military to do one thing, and I was also trained in a bunch of combat sports, and I've got a lot of fights in my life, so a lot of street fights and, some competitive fights too. So it's not good for when I break like that and my anger lets loose and I'm not in control, because I'm literally not in control. Like, I have no cognitive remembrance. It's not like I'm choosing to do it. It just happens, and that's what's scary. That's what's super scary about CTE, and it's a super scary place to be, because it's a place that you tell people and they become scared of you, and they treat you like a plague a little bit. Like you're damaged, and you are damaged, but you can't help it. It's not your fault. It's not a moral choice. Having CTE is not a moral decision. It's not a values that has nothing to do with your integrity. It's something that's physical and that's beyond your ability to control. And that's the scary thing about it. It's something that I can manage. I manage by seeing doctors a lot, having my support system. I have a routine. There are days when I still have crazy thoughts and I do things that are erratic. I got a support system with my sister and brother-in-law that I tell them what's going on. I try to keep them in the loop in my doctors as well, if I have any behavior out of the normal. And I do the best I can. It's a hard, lonely place. Not a lot of people support you. I'm a 39-year-old guy. I'm single, and a lot of that's my fault. I've been married before. I've had about 1 billion girlfriends that I've ran through, and when I had a chance to settle down, I didn't. I kept playing the field, and as I've gotten older now I've got injuries and problems and issues, and the choices I made, I don't have a bunch of people standing beside me. I don't have a helpmate, so I have myself, and I have my sister, and my dad's still alive, but he's about 6 hours away, and that's about it. I have some friends that are within 5 or 6 hours, and another that's in Atlanta, which is about 3 hours, and a few decent friends here and then, not a lot of close ones, but that's about it. So the future for me it's kind of scary sometimes. I fear that I'm going to wind up in a nursing home, pooping and peeing on myself and not knowing where I'm at, being completely spaced out, having no memory of anybody or anything, and just being like an Alzheimer's person. Either that, or there's guys that have had CTE. They have been diagnosed after their death. I think that there was a wrestler named, I think it was Chris Benoit, who just went crazy. He tucked all his family in, gave them Bibles, and then shot them all. And it's terrifying to think that something like that could happen. But that's something I live with every day, and it's not something that people around me are very loving or caring about. It's something I have to bear myself. And it's difficult, There's times that I've thought about ending my life. I tried one night, I put a pistol in my head and pulled the trigger. And I had the pistol at an angle correctly. I had it angled too high up, because I wasn't in my complete same place when I did this. I pulled the trigger and the bullet went through the roof. It just skimmed off my head. But that's the truth. That's the reality of what I'm dealing with. But there's a lot of people out here that have CTE, and a lot of these fighters out here, MMA, boxers, another term for it, they call it punch drunk. And, it's not something to make fun of. I have seizures now, like you saw Muhammad Ali, all the shaking and the Parkinson's he had. That was from CTE. That was from all the blows he got to his head. Muhammad Ali took way more brain trauma than he should have, and that's why he stuttered and shook. And, you could tell he wasn't all quite there, but he was a strong spirit. He was a strong soul, so he kept coming through. And that's what my hope is, to have. I look at a guy like Ali, and I say, he has a strong heart and a strong spirit. I have a strong heart and a strong spirit. He made it to the end with his conditions. I can do it too. So it is a livable life. It's totally something that, difficult as it is, I can deal with it. I have to deal with it, and I will continue to deal with it whether I want to or not. But I just thought I should comment on, a lot of people don't understand how serious it is to get brain trauma. If you have a concussion, or you take a blow to the head, you need to seriously watch yourself. You need to seek medical attention, and you need to get the right rest and see in the right safety requirements, because it can change your life forever. It changed mine forever. I'll never be the person that I was before. Even my personality changed. I used to be very goofy and just fun and carefree, and I went from that to a very serious and angry and stern person. And I was never that way, so it even changed my personality. But it is what it is. I hope that something I've shared with you is helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them below. And thanks for watching. Have a good day, and God bless.